Okay, welcome to another Forensic Happy Hour. And so, El Marquez is a guest, and just to kind of, I guess, get you guys ready for the conversation, is when I asked her, I said, hey, when you come on the show, and yeah, sure, it'd be great. We'll do that, and then said, hey, we use Skype, we run it through and use Skype, and she says, I better go find something that runs Windows. And I said, this is going to be crazy. So I'm excited. I'm excited because I continue to learn so much from every guest is on here, and I know this is not going to be any different. So, Elle, thank you very much for coming on.
Yay.
Cheers. Cheers. Very good. And I had to tell a little the story because when you sent that to me, I'm like, I'm gonna get learned because it's always kind of a I use a Mac, but I have to rely because a lot of software runs on Windows. And when someone comes into obviously kind of a Linux kind of a guru, I mean I just want to go, you're awesome. So so what I want you to do is I want you to introduce yourself. I want you to go through really kind of I always see the journey, but sometimes it's not a journey. Sometimes you're just there. But how you started, really the middle part of the sandwich, and then what you're doing now.
I'm trying not to cough after taking that though.
Yeah, hey, that's okay. It's okay. Whiskey is good.
That was one though. Okay, so I have to start a little further back than most people, but I promise I'll keep it short and it's extremely relevant. Um, so I grew up in Mexico. My parents were migrant workers, and throughout time, my dad came here when he was 13 years old to work and help his family out. So coming here, my dad had a farm and everything, and I think it's really important when it comes to the cybersecurity world because I didn't have a lot of the toys and the life that people had that was surrounded by tech. Running around the fields and using our imagination and sitting on the campfire and our uncles just telling us these crazy stories that they would come up with in ways that we'd never even thought about. So I went to migrant school. Not a lot of tech there either, but I don't know, like everybody carried that spark of curiosity because it was really boring. So we'd make up our own adventures. From there, I actually went to college and studied theology. It was just the most random thing. So tech was never part of my life. It wasn't an important part. Graduated, went and lived off the grid. We're talking, goats and all kinds of stuff. And unfortunately, some really bad stuff happened, and I almost ended up homeless. And I thought, what makes money? So started learning Linux through a 6-week boot camp. And there's one thing that I know is hard work. So at the end of that 6 weeks, I was a Red Hat certified system administrator. Went YOLO and went for a job at Rackspace. Ended up being hired, probably 4 or 5 months after I started as a Linux sysad at Rackspace. So it was just crazy. It's been an adventure. And all of it is because you don't view reality. You just go, what's the next step? How do I make it happen? I sucked as a Linux admin. I will just own that. And it wasn't because I didn't have the skill, is it was so boring. It was just this box in and day out, alerts. But I had a really great team. And one of my mentors moved on to do OpenStack. So I was like, I'm following, why not? And that was a whole new world. You're literally building the cloud. You're taking these servers and making something out of nothing. And you could create whatever it was that the customer wanted. And we had a customer who was making their own Cat5 for their data center. And so we would be behind by days. And I just imagined people just sitting on buckets, stringing the Cat5.
Right.
So it
Right.
was just a really crazy adventure. And from there, tech is just growing. So I started learning containers, and I was putting on one thing is I volunteer a lot. And I mean a lot. So not even being in cybersecurity, I was already helping with 4 different cybersecurity conferences and running them, and didn't know half of what was actually being said, but what are you gonna do, right? That's how you learn.
Right.
And this crazy guy just walked up to me at one of the conferences. And he goes, I don't know who you are, but why don't you work for me? And I was like, because I don't know who you are either.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, no, that's a creepy, or I'm not sure. Right.
It could be, but I was interested. I don't, what do you do? And so at that time, there was no job rec or anything. He was just like, I like your spirit. I like the way you're jumping in and learning things. So my entire job description was change the community by changing one student's life at a time. Like, who could want a better job, right?
Right.
That's amazing. And I could do whatever I wanted. I did containers for a while. I did some Linux. I started studying security. I did podcasting as a part of it. It it's been such an adventure, but after a while, I started viewing those as like not technical, right? You start losing your tech skills when you're not doing it. So I started
Right.
reading up and went, my entire hacker family is in cybersecurity, so why am I not? So I mean, I went little. I went for my Sec Plus, and probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done because it's alphabet soup, right?
Right.
And then from there, I went to SANS, and I just started, for some reason, like collecting certs made me feel more technical. It's ridiculous, right? I
Right.
own that it's
Right.
ridiculous, but it is what it is, and that's what worked for me. And I saw this job posting at this company called Inazur, right? And they do genetic software mapping. I knew what that
Oh,
was, right? I,
wow.
I
Yeah,
knew,
but it just sounds awesome.
yeah, I was like, that's exciting. And they're finding like new malware all the time, and I'm reading up on it. I'm like, I want to do this. And so I apply, and they're like, looking at your resume, this really isn't your forte. And I'm like, give me a shot. Like, what is it going to cost you? I went through 8 interviews in the span of 2.5 weeks. And the last interview, the CEO is like, you've been through more interviews than anyone else. I know you're not qualified to do this, but I'm excited to figure out what's going to happen next. And they gave me the job. So
Fantastic.
it's just been one adventure after another by not believing what reality is and just being creative about it.
Yeah, so a question is that if I can go back to it, because this is extremely interesting, and the people that and all the guests that I have on here, it is kind of, I don't want to say the same, but not. I always see the same. Um, I don't know, path where there wasn't a path at all, right? It was like I'm doing something else with my life, then all of a sudden something just sparks you into, falling into it and falling in love with what you're doing. So if I can go back to university, theology is just, it's a little bit different, right? Than obviously going into cybersecurity. So what is it that all of a sudden you said, man, because I know it's just, hey, I need to make money. I get that, but I know there has to be something, in your back of your mind that you're like, this is really kind of why I did it.
Kind of goes back to what I kind of keep saying, and that's about curiosity. I didn't know what Linux was. I can tell you that
Right.
even halfway through the class studying for my exam, other than an operating system kind of like Windows, and even right now, I know nothing about Windows. It's a whole new, like, it's like it was like theology. There's this whole adventure. There's not one way to do things or one understanding of it. So as long as
Mhm.
I got to the end goal of configuration, of blocking an attack, nobody cared how I did it. Just do it.
Right.
And so
Right.
I'll
Right.
tell you, I was the first person in the class to get a kernel panic. And like, I wasn't ashamed of that. That was so cool. I managed to take this machine, which they'd
Yeah.
configured so we
Yeah.
couldn't screw it up, and I screwed it up.
And you
And
did.
then I got to learn how to
Exactly.
fix it.
Right. Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that was the jump. Is really, I don't think it's that different. Theology and how many Linux zealots do we have? It's this way or no way, the neckbeards. And even in
Right.
cybersecurity, I've seen that. You have to be in this field or you don't have to any
Right.
experience. So you have to start here. And it's canon.
Yeah.
We see.
So yeah, so kind of getting back to that, because again, I get it, right? Is with the theology, with trying to get into it, but is that something? Is it some? I mean, the drive, having that drive and keeping, consuming that, is that what someone in this space needs?
Definitely. It's one thing. I mentor a lot, and I don't even have to be in the field that you're in order to mentor because at the end of the day, it's are you passionate about what you're doing? Because if you're not going to progress. It becomes a
Yeah.
daunting task. Do you have,
Yeah, so that's one
yeah,
thing. Yeah, that's not to cut you off, but I mean, it's those people that really love what they're doing, and I don't want to say we do it for free, right? But you enjoy doing it. You have to pay the bills, but there's a lot of people that get into it because of I just want to make a lot of money, and I have, and this is my personal opinion, I've seen that side of it that they really don't progress, right? They're just on to can I make more money rather than how can I learn more? How can I go and train? How can I go and mentor someone? How can I go and make them really love this? I mean, what do you think?
I have seen people who are in it for the money progress because as you progress, you get more money. But they're also the most bitter, just, I don't know, spiteful people. They're the people that will tell you all the reasons that you can't progress and all of the work that they did. And they're the read the effing manual people because that's what they
Right,
did. That's what they went through.
right, right.
So I'm willing to say, as controversial as it might be, is they are the toxic part of the community.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. So one of the things I continue to see, and on social media and others, is misnomer, I guess if that might be a word, is to hacker, right? Is that it's what today I saw just as simple as hacker doesn't equal criminal. So I mean, what I mean, can you speak to that?
yeah, that's something I'm extremely passionate about. My friend Brian started the whole Hacking is Not a Crime foundation. And yeah, that's something different. I was never from the beginning taught that a hacker was a criminal. A criminal is someone who uses their skill for bad, right? I always say, if a plumber kills somebody with a wrench, we don't automatically say that all plumbers are murderers, right? It seems
Right.
ridiculous to me to say that because somebody has a skill that they're going to use it for malicious purposes. I gave a talk recently that was cloud security for muggles. And it was all talking about, Death Eaters being the ones that are attacking. And we're like, not all wizards are Death Eaters, but all Death Eaters are wizards. There is a base skill that you have to have in order to be a quote unquote hacker, but it doesn't mean that I'm using that skill to be able to breach somebody's environment. I always hear that the difference between a hacker and an attacker or a criminal is consent. Right? Somebody has to
Right.
give you the right in order to be able to go and attack their systems. And at that point, you are doing it for good because you're doing it in order to educate and help that company.
And I mean that's perfect. That is because I mean you can look at a lot of different jobs. The base skills are there. You all have to have them. It's just how we always say. I mean in the software that I develop and that the company develops, those things there's like people are like, oh, you know what, that's humanity death. I mean it's bad the stuff that you do. Well, I mean, use it for good, right? You use these things for good. Are there people that are going to use it malicious or nefarious purposes? Hey, I can't control the morality of people, right? We give them the tools. You have to understand, that you use this for good. I mean, so it comes down to, and man, I don't know why, but every one of these shows comes down to human nature. I don't know. It might be the psychology degree, the stuff that I have, because my journey is kind of the same. Do psychology, and then all of a sudden, shit, I'm doing now mobile forensics and digital forensics. That's what all I do. But so how do we solve the human element?
You don't. That's, I mean, we're not going to all of a sudden
That was
become the
like a
Borg.
rhetorical question, of course.
We
Exactly,
will simulate it. No,
exactly.
it's the human element that lets us be who we are. Hacking is all about creativity. You think one step above someone else. A hacker is someone who can look at something and say, how do I make it do what it's not supposed to do? The whole joke of taking apart a VCR and being like, I'll own it. I couldn't have put it back together. I was the kid who just broke the VCR, the one that got
Right.
in trouble. So if you take away the human element, you take away what makes us successful. Yes, the tools that
Hmm.
we write are the tools that the attackers use as well, but they're giving us an opportunity for education as well. They're giving us the next level. I always hear the stronger we get, the better attacker that we make. Cool. The better attacker they
Hmm.
get, the better we need to get too.
Yeah. So what is it that you can give to people that want to get into this? I mean, what some direction. I mean, push what pushed you into the direction. What are some of the things? Because I'm like you. I'm like, yeah, you hand me a book, I'm like, nah, I'm just going to go break something. I'm going to go and figure something out myself, because when I figure something out, I'm either going, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that, or two, shit, that was cool. That was really cool what I just did. So what are some things that you can give to people that are, starting out, and even some of the people that have been doing it for a while?
Get a safety net. Really, you're going to fail. 100%, you're going to break something and not be able to put it back together. You're going to break something you weren't supposed to break and get into. And you're just not going to do it well sometimes. Sometimes you're going to suck at what you're trying to do. That safety net for me has been my mentors. It's been somebody that I go back to and I'm like, so what happened was, and they step in and they're like, all right, let me teach you how to do this. That's so much more than a book can ever be. If you sit down and work with me for 15 minutes, I can learn something that would have taken me a year to figure out. But having a mentor also means that you get to break it first. You're not just in a class, you learn by your own mistakes. I will tell you, though, that when you look for a mentor, there's going to be some people that just suck. There's going to be some people that will tell you why you can't succeed. Don't let those people be who stops you. Let that person be the reason that you succeed. Because just having the courage to ask somebody already makes you a better hacker, a better whatever you want to be, because you had the insight to know that that's what you needed. And so just keep searching.
Yeah, and so with that being said, is I mean, you've kind of had this theme a couple of times, is about is the fear of failure, right? The fear of failure is, that isn't how you grow, right? Because you're going to I'm just going to fail at that, so I'm not going to try it. Is that kind of how you have succeeded in what you've been doing?
Yeah, my greatest successes are my failures because that's what I learned from. That whiskey is still getting me. Sorry, I don't
Yes.
mean to cough in the mic.
Uh,
Um,
Perfect.
but I'm hoping that a lot of the people who are actually listening right now is my Dallas hacker family. I'm not in Dallas, but man, they just adopted me. And you sit around and you're drinking and you're telling your fail stories. And that's what you bond over. That's how you find people who are willing to help you. So, and don't ever look at your failures as something bad. Your failures are what will establish you in this community.
Yeah, I think that that's a great point for people to understand. Is that if you're not failing, you're not doing right. You have to and continue to press on. Um, you will 100% not do something right, but that's great, because now you're going to find a way to do it, correctly, or that so I have a big issue, and I always have, about standardization stuff like A, B, C, D, because as you have already mentioned, you can get to the end result and be successful by not following a pattern of someone else or things that are laid out, right? So is that something that someone getting into the industry needs to also, right? Not fearing failure, but understanding that you can have, create your own path to success by, this line of code is not necessarily, hey, I grab this, and I have to follow these steps, right? Does that make sense? I lost your source, your audio. Sign language, if you know sign language, because you can hear me. Maybe. No, I don't
Wait,
know.
we good now?
Oh, got you.
We don't know how
Yes,
to
you're
work
back.
technology. That's the
You're
issue.
back.
Which is okay.
I
Look, there
think
was a
you
failure.
you,
We're still going
you
to do
muted.
this, and people are laughing now and probably more
Yeah.
engaged than they were to begin with.
Exactly. They're like, text Lee. One's down, one's down.
I'm going to have to learn sign language just because of this. So there you go. No, so the thing that I learned and the thing that I started to impart to others is the concept of it's okay to be new. I made stickers, I did webinars, the whole deal. And the reason is if you're not new at something, you've become stagnant. And if you're stagnant, get the hell out of the way. There's so many more of us that are willing to take that position. And there's a book that I read called Westward Ho. And the quote that I love from it is ever tried, ever fail, but try again, but fail better.
Right.
I,
Right. That's great. I love it. That's very, very good. So with, I mean, with that being said, with those people, it's you just mentioned it, and I mean it's a common theme throughout pretty much any type of technology is how much research, how much learning, how much do you have to be and continue to stay in or stay relevant because stuff changes so quickly.
Yeah, you have what Kubernetes that has a release cycle of every 6 months. OpenStack does as well. And the best programmers, the best hackers, the best developers that I know are the ones that are making those changes. They're, you know what? Every deployment has the opportunity to fail, and a lot of them do. But what you take pride in is that that one deployment that worked. The time you were able to upload code and fix somebody else's issue. I've spent hours trying to install a new Linux distribution and just failed. The best high I have ever had in my career was succeeding at something that I was sure that I would never succeed at. Next to that is succeeding in something that somebody else was sure I would never succeed at.
That's the told you so
Yeah.
type of
And
thing, right?
screw telling
That you
them
do.
so, man. Me just being here. When I moved away from I think I already said it. Yeah, when I moved away from Rackspace, I had one of the sysads go, those who can't do, those who can't teach. And I was like, cool, but those who can't make more money than you do.
Yeah, that's a good one. That is very, very good. So with especially in the line of work that you are, I mean, I don't want to say how I don't know. This word just popped into my head. Is delicious. Is it that people have release cycles that are so quick to keep up with the competition? Is it for obviously them creating some sort of issue with either an API or something else for you? Is it uh, I guess, do you find it easy pickings for those people that have a shorter release cycle than those who maybe put it through a QA process? I mean, a little bit longer and spread out.
Yes and no. I mean, a lot of the vulnerabilities that we've recently found have been in, we have a lot of blogs out about vulnerability that we found within Azure and their actual services. Obviously, those have been thought out, well, hopefully, right? If you're using them as a provider, you really hope they have.
Don't know.
They're major service offerings, yet we still find over 100 million, that would be great, 100 major vulnerabilities each month. It, it, you're going to make mistakes. It's like you said, the human factor. It's
Yeah.
when you do, responsible, oh Lord, I just lost words, but you know what I'm talking about. um, and the company just sits on it. You're 3 weeks later, okay, well, it's going to take a while. 3 months later, and they're still not doing anything about it, you're going, what other mistakes have you made that you're trying to cover up? Then you find a target and you find even more and even more. And that's really when you're kind of getting into that criminal mindset and you're getting like,
Hmm.
they know this stuff. They work in the field. Don't make me think that they, are just somebody who's never heard of it and is trying. They've worked in the field. They know what we do. So I'd never rely on release cycles. It's what is
Hmm.
the company doing and actively working at when somebody finds an issue.
So how about a lot of the infrastructures and corporations are cloud based,
Mhm.
right? Either AWS, Azure. I mean, they're not only hosting, but I mean, they are now taking all of their work product and doing the work within somebody else's environment, or I mean, so I don't see that going away.
Mm-mm.
Is that a liability for a company?
I hate, and I mean, I will straight up say, I hate the concept of the shared responsibility model. Because if my company is attacked and my data is out, is anyone going to care who I used as a cloud provider? Or are they going to care that I allowed that to happen? So people need, when is the last time that you heard of a company using the cloud that asked for AWS's pen test report, that asked for
Right.
their policies, behind it? It it frightens me. The whole concept of just handing over your company to somebody else and saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to take care of the application, but it's shared responsibility. I'm not even going to worry about what occurs there." When we found a vulnerability in Microsoft's or Azure's Functions program, people never asked how his functions configured. What do the containers look like? Have you pen tested them? What's been the history of the vulnerability shown within it? They're like, no, I'm just using their service. It runs really quickly. I'll be fine. What's that about? Like, how can you be
Right.
comfortable with that?
Right. Right. Is there some sort of I don't want to say um, well, there is absolutely no liability because if you're going to go and utilize a lot of services, there's a lot of fine print that they use for that. Saying that you as a company needs to maintain and have all the different securities, and if you don't set it up right, all that other all those things. But companies aren't well, companies don't care, right? They're looking for how can I set these things up? Oh, great. I can actually go and I can set this up. Wow, I can press this button. It's going to configure all this information for me, and I'm great. So looking at that as a as that. So you're running the IT for that company. I mean, what do you do? How do you explain to those C-level or those people that are making those decisions to utilize those types of containers?
The best thing that I have seen is somebody actually showing the problem, is stepping up and going, oh, you think we're secure? Let me show you what I just found. And let me give you 3 examples or 2 examples of a company who had billions of dollars lost because they wouldn't handle this one issue. The whole concept of DevSecOps, as of right now, is just a buzzword. Very few companies are doing it successful. And when they talk about ops, they tend to talk about system administrators, like people who are actively in the boxes. You need to have educated managers who are not only educated in tech, they don't have to know how to use it, but they have to actually understand what you're doing. And they have to be able to sit down and actually take the time to understand what you're explaining. Fight back when you don't have managers that aren't listening. I multiple times have gone over a manager's head. Yes, I know that in the end I might lose my job, but do I want to be on the team that's there when a multi-million-dollar breach happens? Because where's the buck going to stop? It's going to stop
Mm-hmm.
at the security team, even though so many other parties were involved.
Mm-hmm. So I guess talk to me too because I'm extremely interested. How does the interaction, or is there interaction, or is there communication with, obviously the group that is one detecting vulnerabilities. And see, the beer's getting to me. Talking. Either detecting red team, blue team, that type of stuff. How do you interact with those people that are responding the IR side of it? And if they're going to do on the forensic side, do you work in conjunction with them?
Most companies don't. Most companies are completely siloed. I just recently
Again, rhetorical question, but I want you to tell me.
But no, it's good. I just heard a talk recently about, red teamers seeing themselves as like rock stars, right? Yeah, that's what everybody wants to be. They're the ones that want to own that company, the one that found the new vulnerability. Look at me, look how amazing I am. But what does that do for a company? Like, how does that help anyone other than to make another team look bad? And how does that make you a rock star? Right? It's a bit ridiculous. And that's because one of the biggest parts that we're missing in tech is honestly not technical training. It's
Right,
communication, it's
right.
human training. At the end of the day, and I keep saying that, but that's where it lays. Nobody cares what person in the company did something unless that person is the one that screwed up.
Yeah,
And if
yeah.
you're not part of that team and helping others learn, like, why are you there? I just don't understand why some of the people are in the field.
So how does one or a company? I mean, because obviously, if there's something or a vulnerability that's detected, you had that. I mean, isn't that something? Because it's going to leave some sort of digital trace. I mean, that's where I come from, right? And so living in that world, if there's no communication between, hey, we found this, and you're like, dude, another one, awesome. Let's patch this up. But how do we go in and now explain that to, or have the person who might respond to another incident be able to look for that breadcrumb, be able to find that if someone else is utilizing that same technique.
One of the coolest things I've ever seen implemented at a company, and I wish I could say their names because I think I am so proud that they did this. They're the unicorn for DevSecOps. They had a breach. It was pretty bad. They traced it back. They knew exactly where it was in the code. They knew where in the network they got in. And it was that whole concept of, a blameless postmortem. But what do most companies do with that? How do they actually learn? Well, this company integrated DevSecOps from the beginning. So they had somebody from security sitting with the actual developer team through the Scrum process. They had people in
Mm.
security that knew exactly how that application was going, what the deployments were going to look like. And if they found an issue, they'd send a ticket up to the dev team. The dev team had X amount of time to respond to it and say, no, I
Mm.
understand this isn't an issue. This is the way we're doing. Our configuration is going to look this way. And that's
Mm.
the way that they decided to have communication. And if there was a disagreement, there was a table that sat with X security people, X dev people, and all of this was hashed out before that deployment happened. Now, that sounds like it takes
So
a long time, but that's only the first couple of times, right?
yeah, yeah. So why is that why is that the unicorn? I mean, why are more companies? Does it come down to money? Does it come down to you know what, we're going to sweep this under the rug and hopefully it never happens again? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Two main reasons. One, the whole concept of continuous delivery. Our team wants something, they want it now. Our customers are expecting this new feature. We don't have time to vet it. We'll fix the issues on the back end on a different one. Security has no idea this is happening, right? They're just sitting there looking at the screens, trying to figure out where the next attack is going to come from when the attack's actually coming from the inside, right? We are building the back doors that attackers are going to need to be able to be used. I think that's one of the main things is that, like we talked about earlier, is the lack of communication. So
Mm.
we have to stop working in these, like every time that I see a security team out in the knock that's over in the corner, dark, nobody's talking, they're just looking at these boards. I'm like, what good are you really? You're looking for known threats. Your big breach isn't going to come from a known threat. It's going to come from something that you didn't see coming. That's why it was
Mm.
successful. Um,
Right. Yeah, and I think that communication is the number one, right? The communication between the different, I guess, departments I guess across the board, right? Is that understanding, a little part of what everyone else is doing, but being able to go and drive it, be able to drive the communication so that it doesn't happen again, or even you can publish that information, or someone who is going to respond to this event is able to, or even generate policy for other companies. But, it's crazy because what company that loses a ton of money because of some sort of breach is going to go, whew, here, guys, let me show you how we screwed up because I don't want you to do it. I mean, are there companies that do that?
I was, this is where I throw names and I don't mean to, but I was actually talking to Dan Kaminsky over an issue that I had with not understanding how, the great vulnerability of, DNS was working. And as I went through it with him, I was like, well, I don't understand. Like, you found it, you pulled everybody together. How did this not get fixed? How was it still being attacked? And he's like, because companies had made changes from what we knew to be base, and nobody was telling the other companies what was happening. And so everybody doesn't want to admit their failures, right? And they don't want to admit when they come up with a fix that's going to help protect them. But what happens when, this is team B? What happens with team A finds something else and they won't share it with you because there was no opening to communication? They did something great here in San Antonio where they took military bases, some of our largest people, our largest data center, strangely enough, is from a grocery store called HEB. They have the huge data center. They Valero has one here as well. They sat them all down at a table and we're like, we're going to start having real conversations about what we're seeing in attacks. Are we seeing, certain IP addresses or certain attacks or certain crypto miners constantly being, what are you seeing? How are you addressing it? And other companies going, oh, this is how we would address it. And I don't know any other people that are doing this, but in the end, what they realized is that protecting one company protects everybody else. And they're all tied together, right? We're all in the same
Mm.
town. We're all doing the
Mhm.
same thing. And more than likely, we're all going to be seeing the same threat actors.
Mhm. Mhm. So is it, do those companies, because I'm sure they're multinational companies, are actually, multi-state. It's probably throughout the U.S. I mean, they're communicating. Is what you're doing and putting this together going outside of just the city or San Antonio? Is it? I mean, are these some of the things that are getting pushed out?
I can't say for sure because I haven't, since the lockdown, it's been a year since I've seen anything. But I did
Yeah.
see the press was invited at a certain point, not within the closed doors, but some of the communication afterwards. I saw, the company themselves put out publicity responses. And a lot of these individuals were actually going out to conferences and talking about what they did, how they implemented, and the things that they found. Unfortunately, it's grassroots. So I think it's going to take a while and hopefully it doesn't die down. Um, but that's what it's going to take. I was going to go back to my original talk on how people needed to communicate. It doesn't have to be a cultural change right away. Something that I do with our company is I sit with the marketing team. I know what needs to happen. Then I go talk to the researchers and I'm like, is this really in line with what we're doing? Then I go to the sales team and I'm like, is this really what we're telling customers? And slowly they started kind of just bypassing me because they knew what was going to happen. So by the time I asked the question, they're like, we talked to them already. This is what we're doing. This is what we're going to put out. So it just takes one person kind of starting to open the door and opening those gates.
Yeah, I think it comes down to I don't want to say failure if you're whether it be a salesperson, a marketing person, or whatever, is that they're afraid to ask either because they're going to sound stupid. They don't know, they don't want to be technical, and they want to talk to someone technical, and they don't know how to convey that. So again, it all comes down to communication, right? It's a whole human element of, hey, I'm not smart enough, I just can't do this, I'm not able to do that, all those types, right? Is so obviously people need to get outside of that. I don't
On
know
real
how easy
quick,
that is,
one
right?
rule straight up. I am no one at the company. I've come in, I'm there for like 3 weeks. No one knows me. Set the rule that no one at the company is allowed to say the words, I'm not technical.
Love it.
Look at where you're working. At some point, you're working a Windows machine. You are way more technical than I'll ever be in that aspect because I sit down and
Right.
I don't know how to install Skype, right?
Right.
I'm just
Right.
clicking these
Exactly.
package installs going, well, hopefully the defender will tell me if
Hopefully
it's
it
wrong.
works.
Yeah. So getting out of that mindset that your marketing team, nothing will drive me more to be more aggressive than going to a conference and hearing people speak down to a marketing team. Oh, they're just marketing. They don't know how the product works. That's a failing within the company. That's not a failing
Right.
for them. And so if somebody ever comes to me with a question and they walk away not understanding it because they're not technical, that's on me. That's my fault.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
hate the term not being technical. If you can work a
Yeah. One of
VCR,
the
you're technical.
Exactly. And one of the things that actually chatted on there, Brett Shavers, is that it's better to hire a great person and teach the skills than to hire skills and hope you get a great person, which is fantastic, right? I mean, that's exactly what you've been talking about. So let's get a little technical because I'm going to ask you, or how bitching you are, but of how, I mean, one of your favorites that you either identified or worked to, or something, like, give us the CSI on TV version of a either a hack that you did for good, or obviously you found something coming in, either inbound, outbound, however, and you were able to go in and mitigate it.
Okay, it's not what you're going to be looking for, but it's one of the
No, it's
moments I am
whatever.
most proud of.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
So I'm working as an admin and we get phone calls all the time, right? And you have to verify them. And I get this call and it's, oh my God, we're under attack. You have to help us. Our servers are going down. I'm 3 days on the floor. I'm looking around like, is anybody here? This guy genuinely sounds panicked. Like, I'm going to be the reason that his company loses millions. And I'm like, okay, but you have to answer the security question. No, I don't have time. And I'm just like, hold on, I've heard about this, right? You have to answer the security question. And I'm just holding true. And all of a sudden, I start seeing all of the boards around me light up in red. This is a military name from a different country filling these boards up. And I'm going, okay, maybe I'm wrong, right? But I hold true to what we have to do. And at the end of the day, what we end up finding out, it was a lower ranking official, as you can tell, who had caused an issue, who then wanted us to go in and fix the issue so it could never be seen again. And he wouldn't have gotten in trouble because he could say, hey, the admins were in the box. I don't know what they did. And it was a failed but true social engineering attempt. Like,
Yes,
so by refusing to do
exactly.
my
Again,
job.
yeah, yeah, and you know what it comes down to? Again, I think social engineering is the number one that you'd wind up having, and people getting into to some of the systems, right? It's that person that's sitting behind the keyboard,
Mhm.
if it if it is on going through that, right? So with I mean, we've talked about recommendations, and are there resources? What kind of resources can you go? I mean, we talked about mentors. What can people do that might want to just dip their toe in, or it's not the way you're talking, it's not dipping your toe in, you just got to go get it, right? So I mean, so what are some of the things that you can give, or some advice that you might to those that might want to get into obviously what you're doing?
Well, right now I'm getting into the DFIR, space, and I blame James for all of it. He just made it sound so cool and started telling me, war stories, and I'm like, I want to be a part of that. Um,
Right.
the best thing that I have going on for me, and it's that mentorship, is somebody who can draw. This is what my path looked like. These are the tools, and he's pasting. These are the
Exactly. I know. He's like, yeah, I'm on it right
So,
now. He's
I mean,
chatting
you
it.
heard him talk about it. I got this book because of him, and I've got like little post-it notes, and like I'm treating it like a freaking college class. There's highlighted
Right.
sections of this thing, but that's because that's how I learn, right? I am not somebody I'm not somebody who just jumps in and starts breaking things all the time. I want to be successful in this. I want to merge into it. I want to start looking at our honeypots and studying to see what we're seeing there. I can really break something in a bad way if I do that. So I'm taking the time, I'm learning the language, I'm setting up my labs. That doesn't mean that that has to be how you do it. And so
Right.
it's understanding that there's not that one journey. Like if you want to do this in the cloud, start using Linux. Like it can be something as simple as that. Then one day, instead of configuring stuff from the GUI, go do it from the command line. Don't know how to do it? Screw the book, Google it. Why reinvent the
Mm-hmm.
wheel? And eventually
Mm-hmm.
you get to the point where you can't find what's on Google. The best moment I think I ever had was I was having an issue. I'm getting so frustrated and I start Googling it and I find my Stack Overflow answer going, oh, I answered this
Wow.
before.
Right.
So,
Can someone else,
yeah.
yeah, do that
So
for me? Yeah.
that's the biggest thing. Document what it is you're doing because there's a lot of things I've learned that I haven't done in a long time. And so you take a step back in your journey, and that's really when you start feeling like a failure. Teaching something, even if it's to yourself, is the best way to learn something. And
Mm-hmm.
understand that there's not going to, I'm not going to read this applied science, or applied science, incident response book and suddenly know everything. It's going to take
Mm-hmm.
other resources and it's going to take me asking questions. I literally, chapter 4, I have the hell with a question mark written on it. I don't know any of these acronyms that was used in this book. So I'm going to have to go ask people. So that's a long, long way of saying that there is not one path. You're not going to know everything. You don't. I quit my job and was just like, all right, I hate my job. It's going to be succeed or don't eat. I don't
Right.
recommend that. Like,
No. No. Yeah.
um,
That's not the best thing to, for people to do, but no, I 100% get it. And, I think, and I'm gonna dumb it down for myself, but if people want to get into it, they can actually, like you said, Google it. There's a lot of things that are out there and some really, really good things that you can go in and start applying it. I mean, if you want to know, so I like the Matrix. It's an older show, right? But hey, I know Kung Fu, but I kid you not, you can watch YouTube and hey, I can now do this, XYZ. There's a lot of things that people can go in and do, or even get an idea about it by, obviously just researching. It's not like, hey, I'm gonna lay down and all of a sudden wake up and wow, I know how to do
right,
this.
let me tell you
So
a
I
quick
think,
story that's going to illustrate this. And I'm vulnerability right out here. People kept telling me play CTFs. That's how you're going to get technical. Go in and fail, and it's a safe environment. Play hack the box. all right. So I go to Hack the Box and it's like, blah, 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 sign in. Do you have an invitation? So I call my twin and I'm like, he's one of the people who told me to do it. And I'm like, hey, do you have like an invitation that you can send me? And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, to Hack the Box. And he's like, seriously, think about what you're trying to do, and hangs up. I call him back and I'm like, why are you being a jerk? You're the one that told me to do this. And he's like, what are you trying to do? I told you, Hack the Box. What are you trying to do? Hack the. Oh, gotcha.
Thank you. Okay.
Now I know, and it was fun. Obviously, I wasn't breaking things. I got in, and all of a sudden I realized this is so over my head. Like, I'm going to spend hours. I'm going to end up hating this because it's making me feel bad. So I talked to some people, and they're like, go play Pico. Oh, okay. It was a lot of fun. I'm still learning things. So don't assume that the references that someone gives you is what you're going to need, because if you keep
Right.
pushing, man, it's going to suck. You're going to hate it before you even get a start.
Yeah, I think that's extremely important, and it kind of hits home community, right? And especially in the time with the last year, with whole COVID and everybody at home and everybody doing these things, everybody working remote. So how important is a community now? Two questions. Community, obviously, during this time, and do you see it standing strong? After everybody goes back to doing what they're doing, do you think it's going to hold strong?
I'm going to say something that I'm going to get the well actuallys after this. If you're not doing this with the community, you're doing it wrong. Straight up. Some of the best jobs you're going to get because somebody knew you and can vouch for the way that you did things. Some of the best things that you're going to learn are from hearing somebody's fail story about how they did it wrong. It's hard right now because we're all stuck at home. And if I have to go to one more virtual conference, I think I might just leave the industry at this point. Like, I am so burned out on Zoom.
Right.
But one thing that I did was I put out there and I'm like, hey, I'm studying like I don't even remember what it was, subnetting. I'm doing it from this hour to this hour. Just that time, my Zoom room is open. Who wants to come in? And like 10 people show up. Half of it was subnetting, half of it was just talking to each other about the issues that we're facing through this and being able to progress our own careers. Did it for like 3 weeks in a row. It kept getting bigger and more resources were being shared. People are sharing their screen. That's something that doesn't actually happen outside of the pandemic. It's a weird thing to say that we're benefiting from it at that time. It's kind of like hallway con without all the distractions. I'd
Yeah.
like to see
Yeah,
it
and that's
succeed.
yeah, yeah, and and so I think that's the kind of it wasn't necessarily the point. It is the point I'm going to make now is that a lot of the conferences and the virtual conferences they're not going to go away. It's going to be a hybrid model. This is again my own opinion, simply because I think that there is a lot of pluses that have come and on the technical side of it because when people are doing more research, they might have, I don't want to say they have a lot of time because honestly, the forensics, especially the IR and that other side, is only grown like 10 times just because of it. But the availability, the technology, people are like, wow, okay, I'm not afraid of this. I can actually do this. And oh man, it's those people that are in at a conference that are in the back of the room and never ask a question. They might come up after when you're speaking and ask you something, but typically they won't say anything because they're like, I don't want to sound dumb, right? So, but when you bring this into kind of a virtual environment, the anonymity, a lot of the times with people are like, yeah, and again, I think that that's a plus because I think it involves more people that might not become more involved in, say, a live
I'm
stream.
going to go the negative side on that. I don't think that's what
I
happens.
love it.
I go in the Discord room and people are joking around. It's the same person over and over being the communicator. Somebody will ask a question, they'll get a short snippet, and it moves on. And it's that anonymity. How do I know who to
Right,
ask later? How do I know how to follow
right,
up with this? Whereas when I'm a meetup, when I'm at a conference, I know what they look like. We exchange names. I say something like, okay, if I have any more questions, can I ask you in a hushed voice so nobody else knows that I didn't know this? And they're generally like, oh yeah, I helped this guy. Let me introduce you to this guy's one that you ask questions to. Only seeing a recorded presentation where you're not actively talking to anyone isn't the way to do it. Like, we need to have this where you and I are talking. And if I ask you something, oh, let me show you this book, or hold on, let me share my screen.
Right. Right.
That's the human
Yeah.
interaction we're missing.
You exactly. You know what? And I think you're exactly right. Is at a conference you're showing or someone's doing a presentation. You might email, you might have conversations, but again, I think again it comes down to technology, right? People are like, exactly what you're saying is like I'm having a conversation with you right now. We're on it. I'm like, hold on, let me show you some cool. I mean, now you're sharing your screen, and I think again, it becomes more personal. I mean, it's more personal, and I think that people are kind of getting that and being able to be more again community oriented because a lot of times that you'll go to a conference and I mean I people I'm not gonna well some people think that I do this and if I go and talk I can't talk to him because this and he's kind of but again I think community and bringing this in and humanizing and making sure that people understand we want you to succeed, right? We want you to be awesome. We want you to do everything you can. So let's learn together. Because if you come out of something and saying, you know what, I know everything, well, yeah, you don't. I promise you.
It, going into
You're never going to.
DFIR, I had one idea of what it was from the stories people told, from the hype they talked about of what they've done. And I found more and more that I learned and I started talking to people, ignore the hype. They are
Right.
making it so much bigger. And one of the best opportunities I had was to watch 3 researchers go through logs, and they had 3 very different ways in which they were
Mhm.
approaching it. And I started being able to relate, that's what I would look like. I never thought of that. And I actually saw what the job was. And I'm just like, I
Mhm.
want more. But that's what lets me
Right.
know that that's something that I can continue in. If you go in there thinking about this rock star job and that's not what you find yourself in, you're
Right.
not going to be happy. You're not going to
Right.
succeed. Like, find the people who
Yeah,
are
I think
doing
that goes
it.
back to Yeah, I think that goes back to it, and I've brought this up on a couple of shows. Is that one of the things that you know that I continue and that others continue is it's different every day, right? It's not something that I'm just like again I gotta write this. It's something it could turn into a bad time quick, right? In that you're like, didn't see this coming. But that's the fun of it, right? That it changes every day. It's not the same kind of monotonous. And because I honestly could never be and just sit there and do the same thing every day. That's just me.
Most creative people I know, because you're thinking, you know what, I would have done this, and you follow that trail, and somebody's like, no, 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 wait, I think they would have gone here. And that's, you're thinking one step ahead. You are thinking like the attacker. That's pure creativity right there.
They say sometime it's not creativity; it's a criminal aspect, I guess.
Sometimes you've seen it before, right?
I don't know. Once in a while. So, but oh my gosh, honestly, I could go on forever. I could. This has been again. I look at the time. I try to be respectful of people, but I can honestly keep going.
No, thank you
And
so much for this. This is
I do appreciate your time and continue on your rock star
Oh,
trajectory.
no rock
That
stars.
would be
Have
on
you not gotten
keep on
anything
going.
out of
No, you
this?
are not a rock star. You are not a rock star. You are not a rock star. You are not. So, but continue doing what you're doing. I mean, everything's fantastic, and here's why: because you're a great human being. You continue to go in. You want to make people good. You want to make people the best they are.
That's it.
So, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna blush now. Bye.
Oh, don't do that. Have a drink of whiskey and cry. Okay. All right. There it is. Up your nose. Thank you so much. Thank you. And remember, I talked about we'll get everyone together and have drunk forensics, or we'll just come up with a name.
Do it, man. I'm in.
Awesome. Thank you again. Okay. So, yes, again, I keep people too long just because I have a lot of questions, and it is extremely important. Uh, and I kind of take a little, obviously off of the forensic side of it into more of a cybersecurity side of it because, not only am I fascinated by it, but it has everything to do with pretty much everything in the world right now. And there's a lot of things that people don't take or don't consider that I think that they should, based upon our, let's see, airplanes, oil, everything. Yeah, it all has everything to do, and it's all interconnected. So I think it is time that hey, get a new job. So I appreciate everyone participating. Lots of good conversation. Thank you guys. Again, we'll be back next week with another fantastic guest. I look forward to it. Have a great weekend.